Hello, my friends. Today we're going to read chapters 21 through, I don't know, through 23, I think, or 24. It depends. Oh, yeah, 24. Okay. So, sorry. Okay. Chapter 21. On weekends and after dinner, we delivered many potted violets and congratulations balloons and cards of many sentiments. She made her own cards. She wasn't a great artist. Her people were stick figures. The girls all had triangle skirts and pigtails. You would never mistake one of her cards for a hallmark, and but I have never seen cards more heartfelt. They were meaningful in the way of a school child's homemade Christmas card is meaningful. She never left her name. But finally, after much pestering from me, she did tell me how she knew what was going on in other people's lives. It was simple, she said. She read the daily paper, not the headlines, or the front page, or the sports page, or the comics, or the TV listings, or the Hollywood gossip. What she read were the parts that most people ignored, the parts without headlines and pictures, the boondocks of the paper, the hospital admissions, the death notices, the birthday and wedding announcements, the police blotter, the coming events calendar. Most of all, she read the fillers. I love fillers, she exclaimed. What are fillers? I said. She explained that fillers are little items that are not considered important enough to be a story or have a headline. They're never more than one column wide, never more than an inch or two deep. They're most commonly found at the bottoms of inside pages where the eye seldom travels. If the editors had their way, they would never use fillers, but sometimes a reporter doesn't write quite enough words, and the story doesn't reach all the way to the bottom of the page. The paper can't have a blank space there, so the editor dumps in a filler. A filler doesn't need to be news. It doesn't need to be important. It doesn't even need to be read. All it's asked to do is take up space. A filler might be from anywhere and be about anything. It might tell how many pounds of rice a typical Chinese person eats in a lifetime, or say something about beetles in Sumatra. Or the filler might come from down the street. It might mention that so and so's cat is missing, or that so and so has a collection of antique marbles. I searched through the fillers like a prospector digging for gold, she said. So that's it? You read the papers? No, she said. That's not all. There's also the place where I get my hair cut. I always overhear good stuff there. And of course, there are bulletin boards. Do you know how many bulletin boards there are in town? Sure, I said facetiously. I count them every day. So do I, she said, not kidding. So far, I'm up to 41. Offhand, I couldn't think of one except the plywood roadrunner. What do you learn from bulletin boards? Oh, someone just opened a business, someone lost a dog, someone needs a companion. Who advertises for a companion? I said. Who needs one that bad? Lonely people, old people, just somebody to sit with them for a while, she said. I pictured Stargirl sitting in a dark room with an old woman. I couldn't picture myself doing the same thing. Sometimes she seemed so far from me. We were passing Pizza Pizza. There's a bulletin board in there, she said. It was just inside the door. It was smothered with business cards and notices. I pointed to one that said, Odd Jobs, ask for Mike. Call this number. So what does that tell you? I said, with more challenge in my voice than I intended. She read it. Well, could be that Mike lost his regular job and can't find another, so he's hiring himself out. Or even if he had a regular job, it's not enough to make ends meet. He's either not very neat or he can't afford a whole piece of paper. This is just a scrap. So what would you do for him? I said. Oh, I don't know. My parents might have an odd job they need done, or maybe I do, or maybe I could just send him a card. What kind of card would he get? A keep your chin up card. She poked me. Hey, want to play a game? I had a feeling she wasn't talking about poker. Sure, I said. She said she invented it. All you need is your eyes and one other person. I pick somebody on the street, the mall, a store, whatever, and I follow them. Say it's a her. I follow her for 15 minutes and not a minute more. I time myself. The game is, after 15 minutes of watching her, I have to guess what kind of card she needs. But how can you get it to her? Get it to her? You don't know where she lives. True. But that's as far as it goes. That's why it's just a game. It's just for fun. She snuggled into me. She whispered in my ear, "Let's play." I said, "Sure." So we needed a mall. I usually steered away from the Micah Mall. Too many silent treatment MAHS kids hanging around there. We drove 10 miles to the Redstone Mall. It was Saturday afternoon. We picked out a woman, lime green skirt, white sandals. We guessed her age was early 40s. She was buying a soft pretzel, regular, salted, at Auntie Anne's. She carried the pretzel in a little white paper bag. We followed her into Suncoast Video. We overheard her ask for When Harry Met Sally. They didn't have it. She passed Sonoma, then came back and went in. She wandered about, touching pottery with one fingertip, feeling surfaces. She stopped before the dinner plates. She lifted one with the French cafe painted on it. "Van Gogh," Stargirl whispered. The lady seemed to think about the plate, even closed her eyes, holding it to her chest, as if feeling vibrations. But then she put it back and walked out. On to Sears. Lingerie. Bedclothes. I was uneasy, spying from behind a rack of frilly somethings. She was flipping through nightshirts when time ran out. Stargirl and I conferred to the corridor. "Okay," she said. "What do you think?" "Think I feel like a stalker," I said. "A good stalker," she said. "You first," I said. "Well, she's divorced and lonely. No wedding ring. Wants somebody in her life. A home life. She wishes she were Sally and her Harry would come along. She would make him dinner and snuggle with him every night. She tries to eat low-fat foods. She works for a travel agency. She took a free cruise last year, but all she met on the boat were creeps. Her name is Clarissa. She played the clarinet in high school, and her favorite soap is Irish Spring." I boggled. "How do you know all that?" She laughed. "I don't, I'm guessing. That's what makes it fun." "So what card would you send to her?" She put her finger to her lips. "Hmm. To Clarissa I would send, 'While you're waiting for Harry, be good to yourself' card. How about you?" I would send a I mulled over the phrasing. "Don't let Harry catch you flicking' card." Now it was her turn to boggle. "Huh? Didn't you see her pick her nose in Suncoast?" "Not really. I saw her hand go to her nose like she was scratching something." "Yeah, or something. She was picking, that's what. She was quick and sneaky, a real pro." She gave me a playful shove. "You're kidding." I held up my hands. "I'm serious." She was standing in front of the comedies. Her fingers went in, and when it came out, there was something on it. She carried it for about a minute, and then, just as she was leaving Coast, when she thought nobody was looking, she flicked. I didn't see where it landed. She stared at me. I raised my right hand and put my left over my heart. No lie. She broke out laughing so loudly I was embarrassed. She grabbed my arm with both hands to keep from collapsing. Mall walkers stared. We carded two others that day, a woman who spent her whole 15 minutes feeling leather jackets. We called her Betty. And a man we called Adam because of his large Adam's apple, which we renamed Adam's pumpkin. No more pick and flickers. And I did have fun. Whether it came from the game or simply from being with her, I don't know. I do know I was surprised at how close I felt to Clarissa, Betty, and Adam after watching them for only 15 minutes. Throughout the day, Stargirl had been dropping money. She was the Johnny Appleseed of loose change. A penny here, a nickel there, tossed to the sidewalk, laid on a shelf or a bench, even quarters. "I hate change," she said. "It's so jangly. Do you realize how much you must throw away in a year?" "Did you ever see a little kid's face when he spots a penny on the sidewalk?" she said. When her change purse was empty, we drove back to Micah. Along the way, she invited me to dinner at her house. Sorry, guys, I needed a drink. Chapter 22. Archie had claimed the Carraways were normal folks, but I still couldn't imagine Stargirl coming from an ordinary home. I think I expected a leftover hippie scene from the 1960s. Make love, not war. Her mother, in a long skirt with a flower in her hair. Her father's face framed in mutton chop sideburns, saying groovy and right on a lot. Grateful Dead posters, psychedelic lampshades. So I was surprised. Her mother wore shorts and a tank top as she worked the pedal of a sewing machine with her bare foot. She was making a Russian peasant costume for a play to be presented in Denver. Mr. Carraway was on a stepladder outside, painting window sills. No mutton chops, in fact, not much hair at all. The house itself could have been anyone's. Glossy bentwood furniture, throw rugs over hardwood floors, Southwest accents, and a Nazi-style wedding vase here, a Georgia O'Keeffe print there. Nothing to proclaim, you see, she came from here. Same with her room. Except for Cinnamon's blue and yellow plywood apartment in one corner, it might have belonged to any high school girl. I stood in the doorway. "What?" she asked. "I'm surprised," I said. "At what? I thought your room would be different." "How so?" "I don't know. More you." She grinned. "Stacks of fillers, a card-making operation, something like that." "That's my office," she said. She let Cinnamon out. He scurried under her bed. "This is my room." "You have an office?" "Yep." She stuck her foot under the bed. When it came out, Cinnamon was aboard. I wanted to have a place all my own where I could go to work, so I got one. Cinnamon scampered out of the room. "Where is it?" I said. She put a finger to her lips. "Secret." "I bet I know one person who knows," I said. She raised her eyebrows. "Archie." She smiled. "He was talking about you," I said. "He likes you." "He means the world to me," she said. "I think of him as my grandfather." My inspection yielded two curious items. One was a wooden bowl half filled with sand-colored hair. "Yours?" I said. She nodded. "For birds looking for nest materials. I put it out in the spring. Been doing it since I was a little girl. I got more business up north than here." Another item was on a bookshelf. It was a tiny wagon about the size of my fist. It was made of wood and looked like it might have been an antique toy. It was piled high with pebbles. Several other pebbles lay about the wagon wheels. I pointed to it. "You collecting stones or what?" "It's called my happy wagon," she said. "Actually, it could just be as well called my unhappy wagon, but I prefer happy." "So, what's it all about?" "It's about how I feel. When something makes me happy, I put a pebble in the wagon. If I'm unhappy, I take a pebble out. There are 20 pebbles in all." I counted 3 on the shelf. "So there's 17 in the wagon right now?" "Right." "So that means what? You're pretty happy?" "Right again." "What's the biggest number of pebbles ever in the wagon?" She gave me a sly smile. "You're looking at it." It didn't seem like just a pile of pebbles anymore. "Usually," she said, "it's more balanced. It hangs around 10, a couple to one side or the other, back and forth like life." "How close to empty did the wagon ever get?" I said. "Oh." She turned her face to the ceiling and closed her eyes. "Once, down to 3." I was shocked. "Really? You?" She stared. "Why not me?" "You don't seem the type." "What type is that?" "I don't know." I groped for the right words. "The 3 pebble type?" she offered. I shrugged. She picked up a pebble from the shelf and with a grin dropped it into the wagon. "Well, call me Miss Unpredictable." I joined the family for dinner. 3 of us had meatloaf. The 4th, guess who, was a strict vegetarian. She had tofu loaf. Her parents called her Stargirl and Star as casually as if she were Jennifer. After dinner, we sat on the front step. She had brought her camera out. 3 little kids, 2 girls and a boy, were playing in a driveway across the street. She took several pictures of them. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. "See the little boy in the red cap? His name is Peter Sinkovitz. He's 5 years old. I'm doing his biography, sort of." For the 10th time that day she had caught me off guard. Biography? Peter Sinkowitz was coasting down his driveway in a four-wheeled plastic banana. The 2 little girls were running, screaming after him. "Why would you want to do that?" She snapped a picture. Don't you wish somebody came up to you today and gave you a scrapbook called The Life of Leo Borlock? And it's a record, like a journal, of what you did on such and such a date when you were little, from the days you can't remember anymore. And there's pictures and even stuff you dropped or threw away, like a candy wrapper. And it was all done by some neighbor across the street, and you didn't even know she was doing it. Don't you think when you're 50 or 60, you'd give a fortune to have such a thing? I thought about it. It was 10 years since I had been 6. It seemed like a century. She was right about one thing. I didn't remember much about those days, but I didn't really care either. No, I said, I don't think so. And anyway, don't you think his parents are doing that? Family albums and all? One of the little girls managed to wrest the banana roadster away from Peter Sinkowitz. Peter started howling. I'm sure they are, she said, snapping another picture. But those pictures and those moments are posed and smiling. They're not as real as this. Some day he's going to love this picture of himself bawling all while a little girl rides off with his toy. I don't follow him around like we did Clarissa. I just keep an eye out for him. And a couple times a week I jot down what I saw him doing that day. I'll do it for a few more years, and then I'll give it to his parents and give to him when he's older and ready to appreciate it. A puzzled look came over her face. She poked me with her elbow. What? Huh? I said. You're staring at me really funny. What is it? I blurted, Are you running for saint? I regretted the words as soon as they left my lips. She just looked at me, hurt in her eyes. Sorry, I said. I didn't mean to sound nasty. How did you mean to sound? Amazed, I guess. At what? I laughed. What do you think? You! I laughed again and stood before the steps facing her. Look at you. It's Saturday. I've been doing stuff, been with you all day, and you spent the whole day doing stuff for other people, or paying attention to other people, or following other people, or taking pictures of other people. She looked up at me, the hurt gone from her eyes, but not the puzzlement. She blinked. So I don't know what I'm saying. Sounds like you're saying I'm obsessed with other people. Is that it? Maybe it was the angle, but her fawn eyes looking up at me seemed larger than ever. I had to make an effort to keep my balance lest I fall into them. You're different, I said, that's for sure. She batted her eyelids and gave me a flirty grin. Don't you like different? Sure I do, I said, maybe a little too quickly. A look of sudden discovery brightened her face. She reached out with her foot and tapped my sneaker. I know what your problem is. Really? I said. What? You're jealous. You're upset because I'm paying all this attention to other people and not enough to you. Right, I sniffed. I'm jealous of Peter Sinkowitz. She stood. You just want me all to yourself, don't you? She stepped into my space. The tips of our noses were touching. Don't you, Mr. Leo? Her arms were round my neck. We were on the sidewalk in front of her house in full view. What are you doing? I said. I'm giving you some attention, she cooed. Don't you want some attention? I was losing my battle for balance. I don't know, I heard myself say. You're really dumb, she whispered into my ear. Yeah? Yeah. Why do you think there are 18 pebbles in my wagon? And then the last remaining space between our lips was gone, and I was falling headlong into her eyes, right there on Palo Verde after dinner, and I can tell you that was no saint kissing me. Chapter 23. Those are the best times when we were alone, together, out of school. We took long walks around town and into the desert, to her enchanted place. We sat on park benches and people watched. I introduced her to strawberry banana smoothies. I borrowed the pickup and drove us to Red Rock and Glendale. On weekends, we went to Archie's. On his back porch, we talked of 1,000 things and laughed and swooned in pipe smoke and ate pizza. She presented her rhetorical contest speech to Senor Seguero. We never spoke of the shunning. I loved weekends. But Mondays always followed Sundays, and the shunning, it was clear now, had become to me. It was less absolute for me than her, but it was there. I saw it in the eyes that shifted away from mine, the shoulders that turned, the chatter that seemed less loud around me now than before. I fought it. I tested its limits. In the courtyard between classes in the lunchroom, I called out to others just to see if they would respond. When someone turned and nodded, I felt grateful. If someone spoke to me, especially if I had not spoken first, I wanted to cry. I had never realized how much I needed the attention of others to confirm my own presence. I told myself that the shunning was more painful for me than Stargirl. I told myself she was too busy being herself to notice she was being ignored. And in fact, she continued to give birthday people a ukulele serenade and to decorate her desk and to distribute assorted kindnesses. I told myself that even if she did notice, she wouldn't care. I understood why this was happening to me. In the student body, she was part of my identity. I was her boyfriend. I was Mr. Stargirl. Students said things, not to me, not directly, but tuned for me to overhear even as they pretended I was nowhere near. They said she was self-centered spotlight hogger. They said she thought she was some kind of saint. I cringed at that. And that she was better than the rest of us. They said she wanted everyone else to feel guilty for not being as nice and wonderful as she was. They said she was a phony. Most of all, they said she was the reason why the Mica Electrons were not soon to become Arizona state basketball champions. Kevin had been right. When she started cheering for other teams, she did something bad to her own team. To see one of their own priming the opposition did something to the team's morale that hours of practice could not overcome. And the last straw, everyone seemed to agree, was the Sun Valley game. When Stargirl rushed across the court to aid Kovac, the Sun Valley star, all of this was affirmed by our own star, Ardsley himself, who said that when he saw a Micah cheerleader giving comfort to the enemy, the heart went out of him. She was why they lost the next game so miserably to Red Rock, and they hated her for it, and they would never forgive. Unlike Stargirl, I was aware of the constant anger on our schoolmates, seething like snakes under a porch. In fact, I was not only aware of it, but at times I also understood their point of view. There were even moments when something small and huddled within me agreed with it. But then I would see her smile and take a swan dive into her eyes, and the bad moment would be gone. I saw, I heard, I understood. I suffered. But whose sake was I suffering for? I kept thinking of Senor Seguero's question. Whose affection do you value more, hers or others? I became angry. I resented having to choose. I refused to choose. I imagined my life without her and without them, and I didn't like it either way. I pretended it would not always be like this. In the magical moonlight of my bed at night, I pretended she would become more like them and they would become more like her, and in the end I would have it all. Then she did something that made pretending impossible. And that's the end of that reading.